A mandarin is something almost everyone recognizes instantly. Bright, fragrant, and full of juice, it feels simple and familiar. We peel it without thinking, separate the segments, and enjoy its sweetness. It seems soft, fresh, and natural, nothing mysterious at all. But the mandarin is built to hold a surprising amount of liquid, flavor, and structure. Every segment, every drop of juice exists because of a carefully organized internal system. That system remains completely invisible to us in everyday life. To explore it, I take a small piece of mandarin and prepare a thin sample. The material is gently spread onto the slide. Under normal light, it looks almost transparent. Nothing unusual stands out at first glance. As the microscope comes into focus, the familiar fruit begins to change. The smooth surface we imagine no longer exists here. Instead, the mandarin starts to reveal a hidden world formed by delicate layers, soft boundaries, and subtle textures. At low magnification, the sample already looks very different from a slice of fruit. It appears fragile, uneven, and filled with moisture. This is the first step into a microscopic view of something we eat almost every day. And this is only the beginning. As magnification increases, the mandarin will slowly transform into something completely unexpected. At 80 times magnification, the mandarin sample appears as a very light, almost transparent layer spread across the slide. The surface looks uneven and fluid, with large, empty-looking regions dominating the field of view. The familiar, juicy texture of the mandarin disappears almost immediately. Instead of a solid fruit structure, the image feels open and diluted. Wide, pale areas stretch across the sample, separated by soft, curved boundaries. These boundaries mark where the material gathered during preparation. Small, round shapes are scattered throughout the field of view. They vary in size and appear suspended in a mostly clear background. The overall structure feels fragile and unstable. Nothing looks compact or firmly connected. Thin traces and faint textures hint at dissolved material spread thinly across the slide. Moisture seems to dominate everything at this level. At this magnification, the mandarin no longer looks like a fruit segment. It looks more like a watery layer holding tiny remnants of structure. This first view already suggests that mandarin is built around liquid more than solid form. At 200 times magnification, the internal organization of the mandarin becomes more noticeable. The background remains largely translucent, but more detail begins to emerge. Small particles now appear more clearly defined. They are scattered unevenly across the sample. Some areas show clusters of tiny rounded elements grouped together. Other regions remain almost completely empty. This uneven distribution creates a layered visual effect. The sample feels segmented rather than uniform. Soft borders begin to appear between denser and lighter zones. These borders curve naturally and do not form straight lines. They suggest how liquid and soft tissue separate when pressed thin. The structure still feels extremely delicate. There's no sense of rigidity or strong framework. Everything appears suspended, floating, and loosely connected. At this level, the mandarin begins to resemble a hydrated system rather than a solid object. It becomes easier to understand why mandarin releases so much juice when eaten. The fruit is already breaking apart at a microscopic scale. At 800 times magnification, the mandarin transforms into a far more complex microscopic landscape. Fine structures now dominate the image. Thin, fibrous elements become visible, stretching across the field of view. They intersect and overlap, forming a loose internal network. Between these fibers, countless tiny particles are present. They fill the space unevenly, creating textured regions. Some areas appear slightly denser, while others remain almost empty. The contrast between structure and liquid becomes much stronger. Fibers appear to hold shape, while surrounding material looks soft and diffuse. This creates a dynamic visual balance. The image feels active and detailed. Nothing appears smooth or uniform anymore. Every section contains variation in texture and density. At this magnification, the mandarin no longer feels simple or gentle. It begins to look engineered by nature to store liquid efficiently. The internal structure appears designed to break easily while still holding together. This level reveals how delicacy and strength coexist inside the fruit. At 2,000 times magnification, the mandarin becomes almost completely abstract. Nothing here resembles a piece of fruit anymore. The field of view is filled with fine detail and complex textures. Individual fibrous strands are now clearly visible. They appear thin, elongated, and irregular in direction. Some are tightly grouped, while others drift apart into open space. The background is crowded with tiny particles and fragments. These elements vary in shape and size. Some appear rounded, while others look angular or distorted. The structure feels both organized and chaotic at the same time. Patterns emerge, then dissolve as the eye moves across the image. Moisture remains present everywhere, filling even the smallest spaces. At this level, the mandarin no longer feels like food. It looks like a microscopic system built from liquid, fibers, and broken material. A hidden world that exists inside something people eat every day. Seeing this level of detail changes how familiar fruit feels. It invites curiosity about what lies beneath the surface of other everyday foods. If this microscopic world surprised you, there is much more waiting to be discovered.